Excited to welcome UNLV head coach Lindy La Rocque to the basketball podcast. La Rocque was voted the 2023 Mountain West Conference Coach of the Year, her second time winning the honor in 3 seasons. She guided the Lady Rebels to a program record 31 wins during the 2022-23 season and repeated as Mountain West Conference regular season and tournament champions. UNLV appeared in consecutive NCAA championships for the first time since going to 3 straight from 1989 to 1991. UNLV finished the 2022-23 season with Division I's third highest winning percentage, 9-12, behind only South Carolina and LSU. Only these 3 teams won 90% of their games. Lady Rebels maintained a 24-game winning streak, Division I's longest, against conference foes, and a 23-game home winning streak, Division I's second longest. Lindy La Rocque's 72-19 coaching record was the 8th best record all time by winning percentage by a Division I coach after 3 seasons. Lindy, welcome to the basketball podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Excited to have you as well. And what a turnaround. 3 years. That's quite the process that you've gone through. And is it faster than you expected, or was this what you expected?
Oh, well, I think taking this job, I had high expectations for our program and myself. So, I don't know if I put everything, on a timestamp like it has been, but I'm not surprised, kind of by our success. It's not just a product of me, but the great people in our university that's really kind of embraced and supported us. So, it's been great, but I think we still have a lot of room to grow.
Of course. And I love that statement, just that, part of it is coaching, is believing in yourself, and that self-efficacy that obviously transfers to your players. And that belief is such an important part of the coaching process, isn't it?
Yeah, to kind of be in this job, you've got to have thick skin. You've got to be your own champion at times. And, that it can be rewarding. It can be gruesome. It can be brutal at times, but, you've got to stay positive and you got to keep picking yourself up.
Having played at Stanford, obviously tremendous model for how to build a program and run a program in terms of that. I'm wondering, when you returned as an assistant coach, did you learn something behind the scenes that maybe you didn't realize as a player that has helped you as a coach?
Oh, absolutely. Obviously I was coaching before I returned to Stanford, and kind of every stop of my journey has just been critical, I think, to developing, as a person and as a coach. But definitely going back to Stanford as an assistant, knowing, so much about the program from one side, then to kind of flip over to the other side, it wasn't like some drastic major change, but you definitely get to experience it from a new lens. And in terms of my growth as an assistant and as a coach in general, I credit all of my years at Stanford, probably more than anything.
Of course. And I'm curious, is there something specific that stands out to you that, might be able to share with the coaches?
Sure. I think even as a player, we knew preparation was kind of our key as a team, and just how Tara prepares us from scouting reports to practice, and the work ethic piece that preparation takes. And so I kind of already knew that. But and then, like you said, returning as an assistant, I think that was even more evident. And I think that's one of the key things that I've taken here of, having high expectation, like we started with for, our staff and our program, and how you kind of achieve that is working really hard, putting in the work and being prepared for, anything that can really happen.
You mentioned being around other programs, and of course you did that. And one of the great, Sherry Cole, you got a chance to work with, and she's been a tremendous supporter of Basketball Immersion in the podcast. And one of the things that I've taken away from Sherry is obviously her focus and her love of teaching and the teaching process itself. So I'm just wondering some of your takeaways from that experience of being around her.
Yeah, I mean, I was with Sherry for 2 years as your graduate assistant, and next to Tara, she is the most influential, basketball coach and person, kind of, again, in my life and in my career. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head. She's a teacher first and foremost, which, I'm a I'm a child that comes from a family of educators. And so, we from the get-go kind of spoke the same language. But the teaching side that she brings to everything, and just, I mean, I say it all the time, she is just a wizard with words. I mean, just her diction and how she's able to communicate, obviously with staff and players, and written, orally. I mean, that's now kind of what she's pivoted to in life, with her new book and everything. I mean, I don't think there's anyone that's better with words that I know in my life than Sherry Cole.
Absolutely. And, talking about your program and getting into, one of your favorite topics, I know, is offense, and, a bunch of the things that helped shape your success. But just to give coaches perspective, set a single season program record for 3-pointers made, 223, 3-pointers attempted, 664, and free throw percentage, 763. So shooting is a value in your program. And, beyond just recruiting great shooters, what are some things within your program that help shape the philosophy and then obviously the execution of those statistics?
I think it's really awesome. Obviously, yes, first and foremost, we are, pretty offensive minded around here. And obviously it starts with me, and that's kind of my biggest thing. Yes, we play some defense, but, whether it's recruiting or just, talking with our team, if we can't score the basketball, then really nothing else matters. But like you said, kind of whether it's some of those statistics, each year we've increased our points per game, upwards of 75, which is, ranked top 25 something in the country. So we're proud of that. And then what's really interesting, and what you mentioned, is the 3-point percentage and the 3-point makes. So for sure, we value shooting. We practice it. Everyone for the most part on our team has the green light. They have to be able to be a threat from the perimeter. So I think it starts there. But and a lot of coaches ask me, we probably maybe have 2 sets for threes. And and I think especially with the game of how it's evolving, is like everyone wants to be a 3-point shooter. It's like how many different actions, you see Steph Curry and they run him off a bunch of screens and all of that stuff. But we approach our 3-point shooting actually differently, and for us it starts in the paint. One of our identities of our program is scoring in the paint. It starts with our post players. It starts with our guards getting paint touches and getting to the free throw line. So, each year we've set a record number of threes. And again, we have 2 plays for threes, for scripted threes. And so our shooters really credit our dominant post players, and we've had, arguably the player of the year. 2 years ago she was, and this year she missed it by 1 vote, but player of the year in the conference, in the paint, and she has to be doubled and triple teamed. So that's how we get our 3-point shots. So it's not all of the different sets or necessarily actions that we run for threes. It's that we pound it inside with post players, with attack in the rim, really draw people in, and then you kick out offensive rebounds, off double teams, and there's some pretty good wide open threes to be had.
Well, this is fun to talk about because obviously playing through the post is not necessarily in vogue as much in some levels of basketball, but at your level and most levels, below, it's so important to be able to still play through the post. And then 3-point shooting is a byproduct. So let's go there. It seems like you play through the post, particularly in transition. So talk to us about your preferred spacing for your posts, and then some of the things that you do to help prepare your guards to be able to recognize the advantage inside.
Yeah. For sure we play through our posts. It starts there. As a player, I was fortunate to play with some of the best post players ever, still to this day. So, I was a 3-point shooting guard myself, and I knew kind of where I made my money, and it was passing to them first. So then, once they got double teamed, it could happen out to me. But in terms of transition, not just being dominant down there, but they're all mobile. All of our post players run like guards. And that's, again, kind of what we recruit to, but also just, part of our training and the conditioning piece. So we have a first post that runs straight to the rim. Again, obviously there's a million different kind of schools of thought out there of playing on the perimeter, but how we kind of are built, starts with someone running to the rim to draw people to the rim. especially in transition. And then for our guards, we give them the freedom to, they know they have to run hard and they have to run wide, but what side of the floor they're on, it doesn't matter. It can be two guards filling the same side. We call that a loaded floor, or it can be kind of the traditional balance floor, like a right lane, left lane. And they know they have to run hard and wide and deep all the way to the corners. So again, just drawing people down to the baseline, drawing the defense down to the baseline. And I think, for us, that's how we've had success in transition. It opens the floor up for our guards. And then obviously you've got to kind of pick your poison. Are you going to, sag in and help on that post player that's dominant, that's right at the rim in transition, so then you've got some great looks from three, or are you going to stay wide and leave, the post player, one-on-one down there, which we're happy with that too.
So in transition, it seems like guards run to corners to obviously space and create gravity. Is there a preferred place then for your post? Are you trying to run them opposite lane line? You're trying to run them middle of the rim? Different philosophies exist, or they just have a spacing template where they can go to these possibilities?
Yeah, so you kind of, again, just coming back to our post players, unlike, again, kind of some of the norm across the country is we play two traditional post players. So that are interchangeable. Both of them can be on the block, both of them can be on the perimeter, which again helps our scoring, helps just kind of our spacing. So whoever is first is running to the rim. Whoever is second, kind of in that trail spot is, in the opposite, like pro lane from the ball, typically the point guard, and behind them, so we play a 4-round one, but our posts are interchangeable. So our guards are definitely running deep to the corners. We're not stopping at the wings, again, just to draw people down. That just creates a bunch of room for our guard or point guard or whoever has the ball to create. And that trail post is capable of shooting three. So they're spotting up, being ready in the trail spot or that opposite pro lane. And that's really obviously where we get a lot of high-low looks, being able to go direct and in. I think for us, that's the hardest spot for people to double from. So, if we aren't kicking it up for a three or going inside or attacking the basket, then we love to, reverse it from that trail post to first look high and in before initiating more offense.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you went to the high-low because I saw that on film as well. And talk to us about developing that high-low pass or high-low skip look, because that's another way you say is a byproduct to be able to create that three. It's obviously that advantage of having the help on the post.
Yeah, passing is just, man, what a fundamental skill that, to be honest, is just constantly getting overlooked in skill development. You see all the videos and people dribbling between the cones and doing all these fancy things or working on one-footed floaters and all these fancy shots. But man, passing is just, it for us, it is one of our most important skills. Our assistants kind of joke that I've got, the Lindy La Rocque Passing Academy. When we get freshmen, I'm like, you guys are coming down here with me and we're learning how to pass, right and left hand, outside hand, finding the seams, old school camp style of, two-hand chest pass, not just, one dominant hand. So I think it starts with us practicing a lot. And then, for the post players, it just takes a lot of reps for them to kind of learn to read the defense. So we do a lot of breakdowns and some position work and either getting some guys out there or them playing defense on themselves and telling the defense to kind of mix it up. They've got to be able to read if they're, kind of sagging off and going to take away the high-low, then you've got to be able to make that shot. Or if they're pressuring you, then you've got to be able to make a pressured high-low pass, and still get a great look without a turnover. So, we're not perfect by any means, but that is a huge piece to kind of, what we do. So if that's the case, then you've got to practice it a lot, and we do.
So I'm curious your thoughts on this, because one of the challenges in obviously developing passing is doing it unopposed or on air. You don't get the decisions and you don't get the pressure of the visual stimuli and the distracting info and all that different stuff. So you mentioned connecting it to breakdown. Can you give us a perspective on that? Like, you're doing it on air, but then you're connecting it to the breakdown. Can you talk about how you connect those two things?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we could do a whole podcast on passing because
I would love to, Coach. Let's go.
that, next to shooting, again, you can never get a great shot without a great pass, and that's like kind of our forte. So, I mean, we do the basic like partner passing. And I do believe it starts there, because the mechanics, the technical side of it is important before you even put defense on them. So we do a lot of just, dry passing of partner or different passing drills, and team passing drills where they're asked to make a right hand a pass, a left hand bounce pass, overhead skip passes, all of that kind of in the same drill. So we do those things every day. And then, like you said, in the breakdowns, and some position work, skill work stuff, then I think that's when you add the defense, because especially some of these young players, like not being able to pass with their outside hand, you throw defense on them, and then, that doesn't help them feel success. You've got to practice that drive first and build that strength and that skill. So then they can actually feel like why they need to do it. So that's kind of our progression. But, again, that's we do that every day. We might, in the practice plan skip over a couple of things, but we don't skip over passing. And, like you said, for the 3 years that we've been here, I'm really proud of the way we've been able to develop our players into passers, again, because for the most part, when we get them, they're not a blank slate. They've got a lot of bad habits, and pretty quickly, just with our diligence and commitment to making it a priority, we've turned some players into really, really good passers. And like you said, not just being able to mechanically do it, but read defense and make the plays.
Well, the emphasis part is so huge. I mean, if you want to be a good passing team, you've already talked about it, you emphasize it, and it's important to you and it's important to them. So that's big. The one thing that I think gets often overlooked when it comes to passing and being a good passer is freedom. Because we talk about being a good shooter, that you have a green light and you have the freedom to shoot it. The same thing applies. If you want good passers, they have to have the freedom to be able to make their own decision. So talk to us a little bit about that part of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, even like relay it back to transition, right? Like everyone on our team practices that fly pass to that rim run post player. And, if you're going to be okay with that, or if you're going to want that, you got to be okay with a turnover here or there. And how we kind of, preach it to our team is we're okay with those turnovers. Now, you've got to, we also educate them and really kind of coach the basketball IQ piece of it. You've got to know some time and score. What were the last three possessions? Kind of, where's the momentum of the game? And being able to know, like, if this is a 50-50 pass and, there's 2 minutes left and we're down 4, like, that may not be the one. But, so there's multiple layers to it. But, our players do have the freedom. We throw a lot of backdoor passes. And so if they're scared to throw it, it's never going to get there. And to be able to have them have the courage to throw them, you've just got to allow it. And, and then they kind of, they coach themselves of knowing, like, oh, that was too late or too early or too low or something. And for the most part, they can self-correct pretty well. But, that like you said, kind of, you've got to have that freedom, whether it's a fly passes in transition or backdoor passes. I like to think that for every 2, 3, maybe 4 nice passes, like you've got to expect a turnover if you want to, have them keep confident and have the courage to still throw it.
Well, in saying that, we'll come back to this question, but your assist to turnover ratio is outstanding. So you're saying that you're accepting turnovers, but you're really not turning it over that much. And we'll come back to that. The other part I'd love to hear your thoughts on with passing is, and I don't know how you grew up in terms of the way they taught passing, but it was very mechanical. It was very biomechanical. And often it was very limiting, as in, don't ever throw this pass. And I believe that's a big change that has helped programs that embrace passing and freedom in passing to be better passing teams, because you're no longer restricted by don't jump to pass or don't pass with one hand, et cetera, et cetera. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, I mean, I dabble back and forth between like the old school, new school side of things. Again, kind of the layered piece of it. We do, really try to do a good job of increasing our players' basketball IQ. I think the IQ piece is a skill that has to be practiced and can get better. It's not just something people innately have. Yes, some have more than others innately, but it can improve. And so whether it's jumping to pass, or, even when I was a player, it was like, a cardinal sin to throw a bounce pass to the wing, which makes sense. A bounce pass is slower, they're easier to be stolen. So I kind of like go back and forth on that, but then there's times and places to where that is the right pass. So I think, again, we try to I try to coach our team and our players of 9 times out of 10, this is the pass you should be looking to make. But that one time it might call for a different pass, and you've got to make it too. And if you feel it, then you've got to make it. So some of those kind of principles or passing principles, especially staying on your feet and different things, we coach those, but I don't know if we like penalize them if they do them and a bad outcome happens. It's more trying to educate them. I'm like, okay, you did this and this was the outcome. Like, why do you think? And for the most part, they kind of tell you, and they know. So, but there's plenty of times where, you do jump to pass, and that's what you have to do to get the ball there, and it works out. So, it's, trying to get them to really just, like you said, have the freedom to make those decisions, not like totally crush them if they make the wrong decision, but help them, try to learn how to make the next right decision.
And then talking about helping them, are you asking questions? Are you using video? What are some different ways that you help shape their decision making when it comes to passing outside of just, again, practice?
Yeah, video is huge for us. We watch a lot of video, but whether it's in games or practice, I think it catches some of our young players, off, catches them off guard a little bit at the beginning. But I'm always asking them for their feedback and what they think, because ultimately they're the ones out there playing, and for the most part they haven't had to think through the game like that. So when I'm asking them questions, or like, what do you think, or what do you see, at first, freshmen, young players, they can't always give me an answer, and it's like, okay, well, like that's okay, but you got to start thinking like this too, and understanding why you're making some of the decisions. But that happens naturally, as players continue to mature, the game slows down for them. They create more of an opinion of what's going on out there. So we definitely get feedback, but obviously the film doesn't lie, and that's maybe one of the best teaching tools of showing like when there's an extra pass that needs to be made, or a drive and kick, those types of things. So again, just trying to use all of the resources that we have to help educate them.
Love it. And, some of your rankings, Division I's top 25 teams in field goal percentage, 16th, scoring margin, 17th, assist to turnover ratio, 19th, turnovers per game, 19th, scoring offense, 22nd. I mean, the question that comes from all that is that, can you share some of your keys to playing fast and scoring a bunch, but doing so at an efficient level? Because I think that's the harmony that you've created.
Yeah. I mean, what I can tell you is just a little bit of how we coach and preach and practice every day. I started with it. The identities of our team is scoring in the paint and rebounding, and then execute it, and really those things in order. So paint touches, rebounding, creating second, third opportunities offensively, and defensively rebounding, and then executing. So I think we've done a pretty good job of balancing all of those. In terms of, I'm like totally offense. Obviously, we are there, but what most people are surprised at is how good of a defensive rebounding team we are. And that's where our offense starts. If you have to take the ball out, off a made basket, it's hard to run in transition. It's not that you can't, but it's hard to play fast when you're having to take the ball out. So for us, the rebounding, like we pound the glass, and that is a huge emphasis for us. Obviously, offensively, it gives you more opportunities, but defensively, like if we're getting out rebounded and the other team's getting offensive rebounds, then I'm not happy. But that's where I think our offensive catalyst starts, is rebounding. And then people like the efficiency side. I think, again, what the 3-point shooting, like, it's a lot of credit, but it's pounding the paint. It's getting to the basket. Our post players, they're shooting 60% from the field. That's efficient. So then when you're shooting 35% from three, then your numbers kind of look gaudy. So our twos are, typically in the paint, at the rim. And then, we have really good 3-point shooters that, don't feel pressure to make a shot, in order to get the next shot. We've got really confident shooters. And, again, kind of similar to the turnover piece of, I'm okay with a good early shot. If you want to play in transition, I just did a clinic, a couple weeks ago on transition offense. And if you want to score in transition, then you've got to be okay with early shots. You can't want to score in transition and say, you've got to make 2 passes before a shot. Like, that's not transition then. So, the freedom piece, the confidence piece, our team knows you're open early for a good shot, take it and make it. And if you don't, then we've got rebounders flying in there, and it's okay. And kind of, we use a lot of film and just some of the teaching piece, to teach the time and score. But we're okay with good, quick, early shots, and for the most part, that's been working for us.
Absolutely, it's been working for you. And you referred to some of these things throughout the podcast a little bit about the freedom, especially in transition. And then I talked to one of your opposing assistant coaches in your league, and they referenced kind of your half-court offense. Obviously, you don't run a lot of sets. You referenced that already. But you run a little bit of structure, a little bit of continuity. But within that, they said it's unstructured freedom within the structure. And I thought that was like a brilliant way of kind of looking at it. And is that somewhat accurate in terms of the half-court offense?
Yeah, that's really accurate. I don't know who you talk to, but they've got a good scouting report.
They
But it's
still didn't beat you, so it didn't matter, coach.
right. Well, that's kind of, that's part of it, where we definitely have a structure to our offense. And I believe, especially for our team, how we play women's basketball, and I think basketball in general, you can't just totally like play willy-nilly. Otherwise, people don't know, then you lose some trust. Our team can make plays because they know where their teammates are going to be. So we definitely have a continuity offense, but then, within that continuity, there is a lot of freedom to make reads. It's really just reading the defense. And so, it's not complicated. We try to really keep things pretty simple for our team. And if you're getting denied, then you're cutting back door. And once you cut back door, then the next chain of things happen. It's not like totally train tracks of, pass here, go there, make this cut, but there is some structure to where then you can create out of it. And as you read defense, it can look totally different than the previous possession. And it could look totally different the next possession, which, again, obviously we really like. So then we do run some sets, but those are for like really scripted shots, because for the most part, our offense works for us.
It definitely works. And the way I phrase it to people is basketball decisions supersede basketball plays. Mm-hmm. And that concept that you've talked about a little bit. What I'm curious about, because I get asked this a lot, is that when you do run a little bit of structure or continuity, and then you give them freedom, they're going to break the continuity. They're going to break the structure. So what are some things that you do to help them understand how to respace and sort of reset, so to speak, within that?
Well, I think it's them kind of understanding that continuity, and for the most part, when it breaks, you can get back to it pretty quickly. And sometimes, how we teach our offense is not to play to run the offense. Our team, like, they know I lose my mind the most when they don't look to score. Like, we aren't playing offense to run our offense. We're playing offense to score. So I don't want to, change sides of the floor 5 times. sure, like if that's, we love a good reversal because then you're making the defense move. But if we're getting down into the shot clock, then people aren't looking to score because we would have already had two, three, maybe even four actions that people aren't looking to score. So, that like, so when it breaks, it's good because that means someone's looking to score. So then you kind of just make the next play. And for us, it's not about how quickly we can get back into the offense, but it's like if someone's breaking it, then they felt that they had an advantage. And so what we preach is now it's your job to carry that advantage forward, whatever it looks like. Attacking a bad closeout or looking to shoot, on a drive and kick. So, I think that's that structure and, like you said, kind of the freedom to just, again, we preach like it's not about the plays we run, but it's about the plays you make. And we give you the structure to allow you the space to go make those plays. And then the structure also gives you a high level of trust with your teammates to know that they have your back.
Well, I love that answer, Coach. I mean, to be able to like help players understand that when you actually break the structure, it's a good thing is obviously a great way to be able to give them the freedom to say you can go make a play. So that's such an important part of what you just said that I hope coaches caught.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's, like you said, there's kind of all different ways to do things out there. And this is just kind of how we do and how we teach. And if it can help someone else, then great.
Well, definitely, it seems to help your program. So that's a good thing. And you mentioned the rebounding part of it, which is awesome. And I don't want to just talk about offense with you because clearly your program has done it all. So talk to us a little bit about your defensive philosophy then. You mentioned being an offense first coach, which I would say I am somewhat too. But part of the strength of being an offense first coach is that you do become really, really conscious of defense, don't you? Because you're looking at how different ways that you can score.
Sure. Yep. And, I mean, exactly to your point of, yes, I'm like offense through and through, but, if our defense is totally trash, then we'll never have an opportunity to play offense. So, I do favor them both. For us defensively, we pride ourselves on taking away a player's number one thing. And if we can force them to do their second option, then we're okay with that. And again, we're very conscious that we're never going to hold anyone probably or any team to 0 points. But if we can force them into the second thing that they prefer to do, and if it can be contested, then we have a great opportunity to rebound. I think one thing again that is like silly that we do is we really identify like what shots we're okay with them making, and when someone makes a good shot, tell them good shot, because there's a lot of great defense out there, and then sometimes there's just a little bit better offense or maybe a lucky shot, and that's okay. So to not like get discouraged about whatever you did on defense and just say, hey, good shot, and do the same thing, the next possession, and they probably may not make it, twice in a row. So defensively, we're pretty scouting report driven. We watch a lot of film, and I know it's referred a lot as a pack line defense. I don't like to call it pack line because it's not like true pack line principles, but we call it be there defense, so it's like when your player has the ball, you're there. You're not out of position, you're not lunging, you're not trying to deny, you're just there. And so we try to help in gaps, and we don't front the post, but we try to push them off the block a little bit and make them score over us.
Love that. Be their defense. Absolutely. And I thought you were going to say, like, because you're so scouting report focused that, you don't like calling it pack line because you're going to modify a little bit the help based on who you're playing against as well. Is that part of it?
Yeah, for sure. Once we get into games and obviously conference, when you like know teams so well, it is really, individual tendency kind of based. So, the pack line part of it kind of gets thrown out the window. And even obviously we do shell, and we have, certain principles and things, but like you said, I don't totally like beat it to a drum, because once we get into games, if a player's like super right hand dominant, you might be forcing them left everywhere on the court, which might mean middle drives at times, baseline drives, which can go against, some of the general principles that you have. But so that's why we call be there.
I love it. And you mentioned modifying help. Are there situations within scouting report that, again, part of modifying help for me was always certain players that we want to score versus other players we don't. So we'd help harder on certain players and not help on other players because we'd rather have them shoot. Is that part of modifying help as well?
Yeah, for sure. Kind of, playing with a little bit of risk reward of if whether, obviously I'm a little bit into the analytics. I'm not totally like stats driven only. I also kind of use the eye test and some historical knowledge of teams and players. But, if we're willing to, give a little help on someone else and allow some, another player to have a little bit more room to shoot or make a play, then, that's kind of, we pick our poison, and we're willing to live with that. And, again, for young players, that's like a tough pill to swallow. Like, you want me just to like short close out and not guard her? I'm like, well, when everyone has the ball, we're guarding them. We're Division I player, but what you want to be thinking is helping on the post, or knowing where this player is, kind of first. So yeah, it makes help come in all different ways, and whether it's doubling the post, or helping on a baseline drive, or whatever the situation may be. It can be pretty fluid, and that can be a challenge, again, for young players and teams. But then once they kind of buy into it, they really buy into kind of the strategy piece, and knowing the other team's plays. And because once you feel like you got an advantage, that kind of, that piece is addictive, to like know, to try to get into someone else's head and know what they want to do before they even know what they want to do. It's fun.
It's fun, and it comes back to that self-efficacy piece. Even if you're wrong as a coach in terms of what you're trying to get them to do, their belief that you have some advantage is such a big part of scouting report type of defensive systems, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure. And there's been players that have gotten hot, and
Mm-hmm.
and at halftime, if we're like letting a kid, we're short closing out, and she's got 2 or 3 threes, they're like, "Oh, are we changing?" And I'm like, "No, once she makes four, then we'll adjust." And they're like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And at first it's like, okay, we really got to trust you, and they do. And obviously this year we were still able to pull out those games, even with a couple of players, maybe having their career high. But that was our game plan, and what we were willing to live with.
And we saw it in the NCAA tournament, right? The semifinal to the final, the differences in terms of the scouting report approach for Iowa. One worked and one didn't. And, that's part of the game, isn't it? And they still played their best percentages and given themselves the best chance to win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that was, obviously on the biggest platform and the biggest stage, and you could really see, the scouting, and just like main defensive, mindsets and philosophies. South Carolina, obviously a tremendous defensive team, and you wouldn't say that Iowa was known for their defense, but they kind of drew up a game plan. They trusted each other and they stuck to it, and it worked out. And not saying that it would every game, but that game it did.
I'm curious, like it was from coaches' perspectives, obviously all of us look at that and go, okay, that's smart. And then it was interesting, the concept of disrespect. And I'm not sure if that's ever come up in kind of anything you've done, that, oh, you're disrespecting the player by not covering them. And to me, it actually helped our players develop better in practice, because offensively, we would say, like, if we're disrespecting you, you better work harder to get, so we don't, right?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of players, individuals taking that defensive concept personally, which you kind of don't blame them. But to your point, if they're doing that, then it should motivate you to improve that skill and change it. So, and until that happens, then, if you see it as disrespect, then you kind of have the responsibility or the ownership to change it if you want, and or do something about it.
Love it. Building this flexibility and this adaptability within your defense to be able to do these scouting report changes. Talk to us about how you develop that within your practices, because you must be practicing that in some context.
Yes. Part of obviously defense is we have a few different, ball screen coverages. So we kind of start that pretty early on. In terms of just defensive mechanics, obviously the shell drill, there's few things better, and that might be the most old school thing, but it still works. You know, from a scouting report piece, it is hard to practice scouting report in a practice, even if it's against, a player that has a blue jersey that they're the shooter, that one's, okay, but it's hard to, your teammate this is their favorite, move, and you're trying to tell them, well, no, this is their other favorite move when they're trying to imitate someone else. So, we definitely, our defense like gets progressively better over the, especially the non-conference, because there's just nothing that can replicate games and scouting report, and kind of the concentration in that and focus that it takes, like a game, so we kind of, and that's where, just from a coach's perspective, we know that going in too. Obviously we rely more on some of the veteran players, like, okay, you kind of know what's going on, then we got to count on you to do the right thing. But when you're trying to give, playing time and experience to some young players, you've just got to, kind of go through a little bit of growing pains, use some film to really teach them. And then it gives you more things to practice kind of as games go on. But our defense definitely progressively gets better for sure.
Yeah, it speaks to the importance of playing games, which we all love anyways. But that's such a great point there, Coach. And then is two-way coaching a part of the practice in terms of when you play offense and defense as well, which helps connect some of those things?
Yeah, like I might be, talking to you right now, but I'm, our program has only done what it's done because we have a great staff. And so, each staff member has different responsibilities and ownership kind of in practice, whether it's teaching and having an eye for whether it's positions or offense or defense. And so, some drills, like we're coaching both offense and defense. That kind of gets hard, to be honest. A lot of our drills, I'll kind of tell the team of like, we are focusing on the offense. Defense, frankly, do whatever you want, and then on the converse, we'll have like, this is a defensive drill. Like, you are getting subbed out, horn is what, whistle's blowing if you're not doing the right thing defensively. So obviously the game is two ways, right? You've got to be able to put both things together. But I think when you're really in practice trying to focus on one, I think, that's kind of how you said you get a little bit better at the defense, a little bit better at the offense. Then maybe you play a scrimmage and you kind of put them both together.
I know Stanford famously ran the triangle offense. I love the triangle for everything it's taught us about basketball, text winner, and all that. So I'm curious about your takeaways from running the triangle as a player and the different lessons it's maybe taught you that helped you as a coach to understand offense.
Yeah, for me as a young player coming out of high school, where, high school ball, you're just kind of running whatever, and the ball's in your hand, you're kind of doing whatever you want. The triangle was the first offense I ever learned as a maturing basketball player. So it is a little bit of a first love for me too. I had great teammates, and we had like the perfect personnel to run it, great post players, guards around the perimeter, two post players in particular, again, just trying, but to your point, I think the triangle has a lot of really good concepts. Whether you choose to run the whole offense and as a continuity offense, or if you choose to pick some parts of it, like we have parts of the triangle that you could, relate back to the triangle in our current offense, because it was like, I liked that action. and we can implement it here. And so I think it just the spacing that it promotes, the team basketball, playing with each other, and again, you have to have a great post player, at least one, to play the triangle. I mean, obviously everyone thinks of Shaq. You have to have a great post player, and so if that's what your team makeup is, then triangle could be a good thing, or you can just look at it and run it in pieces as a set, or just add it to something else that you're building on. But I love the triangle too.
I love it too. And, speaking back to kind of the high low and the different progressions of reads, that's something out of the triangle as well. Regardless of whether you run the triangle was outstanding at teaching players the progression of reads, about what to look for and then what to look for next.
Yeah, and I think from the triangle, the like sister offense is the Princeton offense. And both things, coming back to passing, you have to be able to your post players have to be great passers. Everyone has to be able to pass. And so I think those are good, like fundamental things that you can take from both offenses, but the triangle for sure on the high low, and really interchangeable post players, I think are more critical. The Princeton's a little bit more for round one, which the triangle is too, but it's more interchangeable with two distinct post players.
Yeah, and the pro version of the triangle basically had a beginning and end. And the Stanford version of the triangle, what I thought that she did an outstanding job of helping us all understand was how to keep it flowing within the triangle from side to side. And that was just outstanding lessons for all of us that love the triangle.
Yeah, I mean, we got some great looks and we ran it into the ground, and it really obviously worked for us. But it also taught me a lot, even as a player, kind of some of the things that now as a coach I take back of. I remember as a player, being on offense to run the offense and to go to the next thing, and maybe passing up opportunities or thoughts to score. And so, again, with our team now, it's taken some of that I learned of, yes, there is an option if you need to, but you have to look to score, and not just run the offense, to get to the next thing.
It's such a great reflection of your time there that you take away the parts that align with you and then you adapt or adopt other ideas. And it's just beautiful to be able to hear you talk about that. I've heard in an article you refer to ball screen and dribble handoff as your meat and potatoes. I think it was one of your staff members that called it that. So talk to us a little bit about your meat and potatoes and how those evolve within your program.
Yeah, that's what, we talked about a little bit of our continuity. And so I refer to it as meat and potatoes. When you sit down for a meal, that's kind of like the bulk of what you're getting, the appetizer, the dessert. For us, those are our sets and some of our, special situation stuff. But our meat and potatoes are revolve out of a ball screen kind of continuity. And with really, this past season, we did more of a dribble handoff instead of like a pass and a follow to a ball screen. And we've kind of gone back and forth. And, our first year we did pass and follow. The last 2 years, we've kind of done more of a dribble handoff. And, I don't know if I'm like totally committed to one or the other. I think they both present great different types of scoring opportunities. Regardless of which one you do, you have to kind of commit to teaching it, because especially just the way the game is being called, a moving screen on a dribble handoff is like one of the most common things. So you've got to really teach the timing of the dribble handoff with the guards just as much with your post players being able to come to a stop and all that. Same with the ball screen, right? There's a lot of patience that kind of takes part of it, but for the most part, we are kind of playing like a 2-man game on one side, and then having our other 3 players, kind of, we call it a 3 side, being ready to kind of read and react and rebound or be ready to shoot. And if they can't score out of that 2-man game, then when it kind of gets kicked to that post player at the top of the key, then the next kind of chain of events happens. And coming back to like, we have structure, but it's unpredictable structure, and it depends on what the defense gives us. We can backdoor, we can down screen, we can kind of shallow cut out of it. And especially towards the end of the year, obviously our team gets really comfortable and creative, and really trusting each other that, the offense on any given possession doesn't look exactly alike, although they're running the same thing.
I love it. And within your meat and potatoes, what's your preferred way of attacking switches, in terms of, whether it's off ball screen or dribble handoff?
Yeah, switches are hard, and for us, coming back to, our identity, it's about getting it into the paint. So if they want to switch a little guard onto our post player who, is player of the year, then we've got to find a way to get the ball back to her. But that can happen in a number of different ways. So, typically we play like with an empty corner on a two-man game, but if someone's really switching, then maybe we put, we keep someone in that corner, so it allows us to throw back to then take advantage of the switch and go right inside from there. But we also give our guards the freedom to, it depends on that type of size of post player. If it's a big lumbering post player, then, try to go attack them. And so then you can draw, more defense and get some of those drives and kicks. So, switches are hard, I think they're hard to teach, and if you can do it defensively, it can be really effective. And then offensively, we've got to be able to not just kind of go out there and play it, because you've got to have some strategy on how to attack it, because it's that tough.
Coach, just so many wonderful things here. And, I think it's on your team website. The way you do anything is the way you do everything, as a motto, as a quote. So talk to us a little bit about that and how that represents you and your program.
We started off talking, kind of about Sherry Cole and her way with words. I think I first heard the phrase or kind of the motto from her of, how you do anything is how you do everything. And it takes a little while for it to sink in. But when people kind of ask me, the recipe for success or the secret ingredient, to be honest, I come back to that. And that is like the fabric of our culture, from our staff, to our support staff, to obviously our players. And it manifests itself in a million different ways. And, at first I say it to our players and they, look at me like I've got 17 heads, like that doesn't make sense, and now you're talking in, gibberish. But, for me, the academic side of being a student athlete is so important. Obviously I went to Stanford, and that is important to me as a player. But even for these young women that are great basketball players, they need their degrees, and you can't just be a great basketball player and not a great student, in my opinion. So how we introduce the concept is that it starts there. How can I expect you to study my scouting report if you can't study for your math test? And at first they're like, well, because I like basketball more. And I'm like, okay, so do I, but your habits and your characteristics of who you are show up in both things. And whatever, whether it's complacency in that math, study session, it will show up somewhere on the court. And if you don't have the discipline to, put your shopping cart away back at the little stall, you're not going to have the discipline to dive on the loose ball, when the game is on the line. And now you think you might, but those things kind of really relate. So I'd probably say it too much, and but they start to realize. And again, it starts with the academic piece of, you're not taking care of your business there, then you're going to lose the opportunity to be on the court with us. But even when we're out in the community of, how you're speaking to this father and his daughter, it's probably going to be how you speak to in an interview, at some point in your life. And so we try to also use just that motto and that phrase to help just, build and create life skills that are outside of basketball, that are interwoven in basketball. And I think, again, as these young people, once they transition, if they're going to continue to play, great, but majority of them don't. And sometimes it's hard for them to understand how their athletic skills and things that they've done for the last 4 years translate to the real world. And, I think we do a pretty good job of showing our team how they will as they're going through it, because we come back to that of, your like work ethic right now in practice is, and when like I'm giving you the hardest drill that I know exists, it's going to be this same drive and determination that you're going to fall upon when you're out there in the real world working, and your project is going sideways and you've just got to grind through it. So we love that saying. I've got maybe a handful in my bag, but that is one that we come back to and we keep in the forefront, because the winning is great, but how you do it matters. And for us, having fun, enjoying each other, really kind of buying into the culture piece is just as important, because you can win a lot of games and not have fun, and that's no fun. So I rather have fun and maybe lose a couple of games than win games and not have any fun.
Thank you so much, Coach, for sharing that and connecting it. I mean, not just great lessons for your players, but for all of us listening as well. So thank you so much for sharing the game with us.
Yeah, no, this has been great. I appreciate you. And I'm honored that you asked me to be a part of your podcast. And I know you've got lots of viewers out there. So whenever anyone's in Vegas, come check us out and see a game and cheer on the Lady Rebels.